The silence in our house didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a sudden explosion or a door slammed in my face. It was a slow, creeping frost that started at the edges of our marriage and worked its way to the center until everything, even the way we breathed in the same room, felt heavy. My name is Elias Thorne. I'm a man who believed in forever, but for the last 8 months, forever felt like a prison sentence in a very expensive, very quiet house in the suburbs of Oak Haven, Illinois. I remember the exact night the wall went up. It was our anniversary. I had planned everything. The reservation at that bistro Sarah loved, the vintage wine, the handwritten note. But when I reached for her hand across the table, she pulled back like I was made of hot lead. No explanation, just a cold, "Not tonight, Elias. Son, I'm tired." That tired turned into a week, then a month, and eventually a season. I became a ghost in my own home, a roommate who paid the bills but wasn't allowed to touch the person he loved. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. By the third month, the bedroom felt like a divided territory. I slept on my side of the king-sized mattress, mindful of the invisible line Sarah had drawn down the middle. She would come to bed late, long after I'd turned out the lamp, her back a rigid silhouette against the moonlight. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong. Had I gained weight? Was I boring? Or was there someone else? I worked as a senior architect at a firm in downtown Chicago. I channeled all my frustration into blueprints and steel structures. If I couldn't build a connection at home, I'd build skyscrapers. But even the tallest building couldn't fill the void in my chest. My friends at the office, guys like Mark and Julian, would talk about their wives, their complaints, their intimacy. I'd just nod and sip my coffee, the taste of copper and resentment thick in my mouth. On Family Secrets and Revenge, we see this all the time, the slow erosion of a man's spirit. In those middle months, months 4, 5, and 6, the house in Oak Haven didn't just feel empty, it felt hostile. I started noticing the small ways Sarah would exert control. It wasn't just the lack of intimacy, it was the micro-rejections. I'd try to tell her about a breakthrough I had on the Westside Stadium project, and she'd start scrolling on her phone before I even finished my first sentence. I'd ask her if she wanted to watch a movie on a Friday night, and she'd sigh, a sound of heavy, performative exhaustion, and say, "I really need to catch up on my personal development reading, Elias. Maybe another time." That personal development reading was the literature from the sovereign wife. She was learning how to make me feel invisible so that I would work harder to be seen. It was a psychological leash, and for a long time, I was the dog pulling at it until my neck bled. When I finally gathered the courage to confront her, Sarah was a master of deflection. We were in the kitchen, the morning light mocking me with its brightness. "Sarah, we haven't been close in 4 months. What is happening to us?" I asked, my voice cracking. She didn't even look up from her tablet. "You're overthinking it, Elias. Work is stressful. The house needs repairs. I just don't have the energy for that." "It's not just that, Sarah, it's us. You don't even look at me," I countered. She sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "If you're going to be needy, I'm going to work." She grabbed her keys and left. That was her pattern: minimize my feelings, label me as needy, and then retreat. It made me feel small. It made me feel like I was the one who was broken. 6 months in, the suspicion started to rot my brain. I started checking her phone. Nothing but work emails and texts from her mother. I checked the credit card statements, standard grocery runs, yoga classes, and in a few high-end clothing boutiques. Everything looked normal on paper, but my gut was screaming. One rainy Tuesday, I came home early from the firm because a project had been delayed. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. I walked inside, the air smelling of her expensive perfume and something else, something masculine. I found a receipt on the foyer table. It was for a luxury hotel in the city, dated for 3 different weekends over the last 2 months. My heart didn't just break, it shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces of ice. I waited for her in the dark. When she walked in at 7 p.m., humming a tune I didn't recognize, I flipped on the lamp. She jumped, clutching her chest. Elias, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark? I held up the receipt. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Nah, the Sterling Hotel, Sarah? 3 times? She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just hardened. It's not what you think. I needed space. I needed to feel like myself again, away from your constant expectations. My expectations? I shouted, the anger finally bubbling over. I just wanted my wife back. You've frozen me out for half a year while you've been living it up in penthouses? Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. If you were in Elias's shoes, finding those receipts after months of being ignored, how would you have reacted in that moment? When I finally got into her locked office after she left for one of those wellness retreats at the Sterling Hotel, I found her journals. They weren't diaries, they were logs, where she had sections titled The Scarcity Principle. Underneath, she had written, Day 42. Elias tried to buy my affection with a necklace. Accept the gift, but remain emotionally distant. Scarcity increases value. She was following a literal curriculum of cruelty. The group taught that a husband's attention is like a currency. If there's too much of it in circulation, the value drops. To make me hyper-invested, she had to create a depression in our emotional economy. Seeing my genuine pain described as a successful metric in her notes changed something in me. The love didn't just die, it was executed. Part of Sarah's strategy involved our social circle. She began planting seeds months before I even realized there was a problem. At neighborhood barbecues or dinners with the Millers, she'd make small, cutting remarks about my instability or my demanding nature. Elias has been so high-strung lately, she'd say with a fake concerned smile. I'm just trying to give him the space he needs to calm down. She was building a narrative where she was the long-suffering patient wife, and I was the volatile husband. It was a preemptive strike. If I ever tried to tell the truth, she had already made sure no one would believe me. She was gaslighting not just me, but our entire community. Instead of throwing her out that night, I did something Sarah didn't expect. I grew quiet. I realized that the man who had been begging for her attention was dead. That version of Elias Thorne had been starved out. I told her, fine. You want space? You have it. From now on, we are roommates, nothing more. I moved my things into the guest room. I stopped asking her about her day. I stopped buying her flowers. I stopped looking at her altogether. I started hitting the gym at 5 a.m. I focused entirely on my work. I was becoming the man she didn't think I could be, independent of her. On Family Secrets and Revenge, we know that the best revenge isn't always an outburst. Sometimes it's total indifference. The night I found the hotel receipts wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my counteroffensive. I didn't just sit in the dark. I sat there with a digital recorder. When she walked in and tried to give me the I'm tired routine, I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. I simply played back a recording I had made earlier that week from a hidden device in her office. A recording of her on a Zoom call with her lifestyle coach. In the recording, Sarah's voice was clear. He's almost there. Another month of silence and he'll sign the house over just to get me to touch his hand again. The look on her face when she heard her own voice plotting my financial ruin was the first time in 8 months I felt a spark of warmth. It was the warmth of justice. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Seeing Sarah's betrayal wasn't a physical affair, but a calculated psychological game. Does that make it better or worse in your eyes? Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Month 7 was the turning point. I was down 15 pounds and looking sharper than I had in years. I started going out after work. One night I walked through the door at 2 a.m. and Sarah was sitting on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed. Hey, where have you been? She whispered. Out, I said simply, heading for the stairs. Elias, wait. We haven't talked in weeks. There's nothing to talk about, Sarah. You wanted space. I'm giving you an ocean of it. I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I held all the cards. Frank Vance, the PI I hired, didn't just find hotel stays. He found the wellness retreat was actually a high-priced seminar for the sovereign wife. He found bank transfers from our joint account, nearly $20,000, sent to an offshore consulting firm run by the group's founder. She wasn't just withholding herself, she was stealing our future. She was paying people to teach her how to ruin me. Frank handed me a folder thick with photos of Sarah laughing and drinking champagne with these women at the hotel spa while I was at home, wondering if our marriage was worth living for. I realized then that I wasn't fighting for a marriage. I was fighting for my survival. I didn't serve the papers immediately. I wanted her to feel the shift. I became the gray man. In psychology, it's a tactic used to deal with narcissists. You become as boring and unreactive as a gray rock. When she tried to bait me into an argument, I'd just say, okay. When she tried to look sexy in the kitchen to see if I'd still chase her, I'd walk past her as if she were a piece of furniture. The gray rock method drove her insane. The group had taught her how to handle a man who was angry or desperate, but they hadn't taught her how to handle a man who simply didn't care. The power dynamic didn't just shift, it flipped. She started checking my phone. She started asking me where I was going. And the hunter had become the hunted. Suddenly, Sarah was the one trying to initiate contact. She'd cook my favorite meals. She'd wear the silk robe I bought her years ago. She'd linger in the doorway of the guest room, her eyes searching mine for a spark that was no longer there. "Elias, I made that pot roast you like," she said one evening, her voice trembling. "Thanks, but I have dinner plans with the board," I lied. I wasn't even hungry, but the look of rejection on her face was a bitter medicine she needed to taste. She had starved me for months. Now it was her turn to feel the hunger. My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, didn't hold back. "In the state of Illinois, we can't sue for meanness, Elias," Marcus told me. "Honey, but we can use her participation in this group to prove she was intentionally devaluing the marital assets by prioritizing this lifestyle coach over her responsibilities." The discovery process was brutal. We subpoenaed Sarah's communications with the group. Every time I thought I had reached the bottom of her cruelty, she found a way to dig deeper. On Family Secrets and Revenge, we see how the people you trust most can become your most dangerous adversaries once they stop seeing you as a human being. We met in a sterile conference room on the 40th floor of a Chicago skyscraper. Sarah sat across from me, looking like the wronged wife. Her lawyer started with a list of demands: the house, 70% of my 401k, and permanent alimony. I didn't say a word. I just nodded to Marcus. He played an audio clip from one of her Sovereign Wife seminars where Sarah was heard laughing about how she was going to drain me dry once she had successfully broken my spirit. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's lawyer turned to her, his face a mask of horror. Even he didn't know the extent of her game. I decided to let her play her hand until she folded. One night she came into the guest room while I was reading. She sat on the edge of the bed and reached out, touching my arm. "Elias, I miss you. I'm sorry for the last few months. I was lost, but I'm back now. Can we go back to our room?" I looked at her hand on my arm like it was a stray hair I needed to brush off. "I'm comfortable here, Sarah. And honestly, I've realized I prefer the peace." The look of genuine shock on her face was cinematic. She had expected me to leap at the chance to have her back. She didn't realize that when you kill a fire, you can't just expect the ashes to stay warm forever. Sarah started begging. It began with texts during the day. Then it turned into public displays. She showed up at my office with a catered meal. My coworkers looked on in confusion as she hovered over my desk, acting like the doting wife she hadn't been for nearly a year. "Sarah, you're embarrassing yourself," I whispered, lead cold. "I don't care. I want my husband back," she cried out. The firm went silent. I grabbed her arm and led her to the elevator. "You didn't want a husband, Sarah. You wanted a pet. Well, this dog found a new pack." If you were in Elias' shoes facing a situation like this, when knowing your spouse had calculated your pain as a growth exercise, what would you do? Would you stay and try to heal? Or would you walk away like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. When the truth came out, the neighborhood friends who had whispered about me suddenly found themselves in a difficult position. I didn't go around explaining myself. I didn't need to. The court documents were public record. When Sarah was forced to sell her car and move into a small apartment on the outskirts of town, the whispers changed. "Did you hear what she was doing?" they'd ask at the coffee shop. I'd just smile and keep walking. I had learned that the only person's opinion of Elias Thorne that mattered was Elias Thorne's. On Family Secrets and Revenge, we learn that the truth doesn't just set you free, it cleanses your circle. The mediation ended an hour later. Sarah walked away with the minimum. No alimony, no house, just her personal belongings and a small lump sum to get her started. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about the principle. I wouldn't fund her life while she had spent months trying to dismantle mine. As she signed the final papers, she looked at me with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the most honest she had been in years. There was no tiredness in her eyes now, only the rage of a gambler who had bet everything on a bluff and lost. Walking back into the Oakhaven house alone was strange. The air felt lighter. I spent the weekend purging. I threw out the mattress we had shared. I repainted the walls from her serene beige to a bold architectural gray. I reclaimed every square inch. I realized that the intimacy she had withheld wasn't just physical, it was the intimacy of being known. She had stopped knowing me because she was too busy trying to own me. Rebuilding my life wasn't about finding a new woman, it was about finding the man Sarah had tried to erase. I went back to the gym not just for the body, but for the discipline. I started taking solo trips, cabin stays in the Northwoods, hiking the Appalachian Trail. I needed to remember what it felt like to be alone without being lonely. I realized that Sarah's silent treatment had actually given me a gift. It had taught me that I could survive the worst emotional desert and come out stronger on the other side. She thought she was starving me. She was actually fast-tracking my evolution. Even after the divorce was finalized, Sarah didn't go quietly. She started a blog trying to frame herself as a victim of financial abuse because she didn't get the house. She'd tag me in posts. She'd send long, rambling emails at 3 a.m., alternating between "I miss you" and "I hate you." I didn't go around explaining myself. I chose the one thing she hated more than anything: silence. I blocked her. I blocked the friends who enabled her. I chose peace over being right. I eventually met Julianne at a charity auction. She was an artist, someone who lived her life in color, while Sarah had lived hers in shades of gray manipulation. When Julianne reaches for my hand, she doesn't do it to see how I'll react. She does it because she wants to be close. It took me a year to stop flinching when someone showed me genuine affection. It took me a year to realize that not every silence is a weapon. But I wouldn't trade the pain for anything. It made the peace I have now feel earned. Months later, I saw Sarah one last time. It was by accident at a grocery store on the edge of town. She looked diminished. She saw me and stopped. "Elias," she whispered. I just nodded. I didn't stop. I didn't ask how she was. I didn't offer a polite smile. I just kept walking. Before we reach the end of this journey, I would love to hear your point of view. Seeing Elias finally move on and find his peace, do you think his cold silence at the grocery store was the right move? Or should he have given her a chance to apologize? Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. What Sarah never understood is that intimacy is a gift, not a weapon. When you weaponize the bedroom, you aren't just hurting your partner. You're poisoning the well you both drink from. She thought she was building a throne, but she was actually digging a grave. On Family Secrets and Revenge, we tell these stories not just for the drama, but for the warning. Love requires a vulnerability that cannot coexist with a desire for power. You can have a partner, or you can have a subject. You cannot have both. I returned to my true passion, architecture. I took on a project in Seattle, a sustainable housing complex. It required me to travel, to meet new people, to see the world outside the suffocating borders of Oakhaven. I started hiking. I started painting again. I realized that Sarah hadn't just stolen 8 months of my life. She had nearly stolen my ability to trust my own eyes. But now the foundation is stronger than it's ever been. My life is mine again. The silence in my home is no longer a frost. It's a sanctuary. I've learned that I am enough with or without someone else's validation. And if I ever choose to let someone in again, it will be because they want to build something with me, not on top of me. Looking back, the months of refusal were a gift. They forced me to stand on my own 2 feet. If Sarah hadn't pushed me away, I might still be that desperate man begging for a crumb of affection. Instead, I'm whole. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. This story is a reminder that your worth is never determined by someone else's willingness to give you attention. Thank you so much for watching another deep dive here on Family Secrets and Revenge. When stories like these remind us that the people closest to us often hold the power to hurt us the most, but only if we let them. If you found Elias's journey to be a powerful reminder of self-worth, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your overall thoughts on Elias and Sarah's fallout, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Family Secrets and Revenge, for more stories of truth and triumph. We read every single comment and love hearing your perspectives based on my story. See you in the next one.